It wasn't the guillotine that destroyed Marie Antoinette. It was everything that happened before. Before Paris stirred on that frozen morning, before thousands gathered to watch her fall, before the blade descended and split history in two, she had already been reduced to a ghost. Picture this: a damp cell where water drips from the ceiling like a clock marking the final heartbeats. The smell of wet stone, confinement, and abandonment fills the air. 2 guards stand motionless, watching her even while she sleeps. A single candle flickers, illuminating her sunken eyes for just seconds at a time. She trembles, not from the cold, but from absence. Weeks earlier, she had stopped being the queen. Here, she is simply prisoner number 280. This is not a romantic tale or an exaggerated tragedy. This is methodical dehumanization. Where once there were gold-framed mirrors, now there are walls sweating with moisture. Where once there was music, now only the crackling of the candle and the echo of boots remain. Where once children ran through gardens, now only piercing questions fill her chest. Are they alive? Will they remember my voice? In this dark place, in this crushing silence, the Réal story begins. Not at the guillotine, not in revolutionary speeches, not in propaganda. Here where they tried to break her before killing her. Here where the woman who once symbolized wealth became a symbol of guilt. But what no one expected was this: the revolution could not destroy the one thing she never let go, her dignity. And that is what turns her ending into something deeper than mere political punishment. Because the real question is not how she died. The real question is what they did to her before. If you want to understand this story with the truth and emotion you have never been told, stay with me. And if this type of deep historical content interests you, subscribe and leave a like. It helps tremendously in bringing you more real stories like this. Long before becoming France's most watched prisoner, Marie Antoinette had been something else. A teenager ripped from Austria and sent as a diplomatic pawn. She was only 14 when they sent her to Versailles, a palace where every gesture carried weight and every glance could spark poison. In Austria, she was a bridge to France. In France, she was an intruder with a foreign accent. The seed of hatred was planted early. Versailles was never beauty. It was theater. And Marie Antoinette, without wanting it, became the protagonist of a play she did not write. When economic crisis struck, the people's rage needed a visible target. The image everywhere was hers: the young queen, the foreigner, the supposed spendthrift. Propaganda painted her as a witch, a traitor, a libertine. They even invented the line, "Let them eat cake." A lie so useful it became truth. The revolution did not need proof. It needed a villain easy to hate. And they found one. The royal family tried to escape at Varennes. They almost made it, but someone recognized them. When the mob dragged them back to Paris, the carriage windows dripped with spit. From that day forward, Marie Antoinette stopped being a person. She was reduced to a political object, a trophy and a warning. The following months were a slow stripping away. First her home, then her freedom, then her friendships, and finally her children. The leaders wanted more than a quick execution. They wanted public humiliation. They wanted the world to watch a queen be broken. When they took her to the conciergerie, the message was clear. Here we stop punishing the queen and start breaking the woman. No more silk dresses, no more court rituals. Only a cold cell and the new name: prisoner number 280. But though they stripped everything from her, they could not break her spirit. Within those damp walls, a silent dignity hardened by loss took shape. And the worst had not even begun. The conciergerie was known as the antechamber of death. They led her down a narrow corridor where the air smelled of ancient moisture. The door slammed shut behind her. The cell was a stone cube, damp straw, a bucket, a crooked table, and the endless sound of water dripping. But the worst was not the stone. It was the eyes that never stopped watching. 2 guards, day and night, monitoring every breath and every gesture. The surveillance was not for security. It was to break her. Time became measured in guard footsteps and distant cries. Marie Antoinette slept little. When she closed her eyes, she saw the night they tore her 8-year-old son from her arms. "He's only a child," she had begged. That night broke her not as queen, but as mother. Every dawn she woke groping for the small portrait of her son hidden near her chest, protecting it like her last breath. Sometimes her only human company was Rosalie, the young woman who brought food. Rosalie saw a woman who no longer cried for herself, but for what had been stolen, repeating her children's names in whispers like prayers, then recovering in silence, refusing to yield. In that dark cell, Marie Antoinette understood something no one expected. They could do nothing worse. She had already lost everything. And when someone loses everything, fear disappears. That is how an unsettling calm was born. A calm that came not from hope, but from acceptance. On October 14, 1793, before dawn, the guard's footsteps shattered the silence. They led her to the tribunal, a packed theater of hatred. Prosecutor Fouquier Tinville unleashed a list of accusations: treason, collaboration with foreign powers, squandering the nation's wealth. Then came the vilest accusation of all, one so shocking it paralyzed even hardened revolutionaries: an unspeakable crime involving her own son. A frozen murmur swept the hall. She remained motionless, made of stone. Marie Antoinette rose slowly. She did not look at the judges or the prosecutor. She looked directly at the market women in the audience and said with a clear, firm, almost maternal voice, "I appeal to all the mothers who are here, nothing more." The hall froze. Some women began to cry. In that instant, the hated queen became what she had always been: a mother brutally separated from her child. The trial ended as expected: guilty of high treason. Sentence: death. When asked if she had anything to say, she replied, "What more could I add?" Her dignity was stronger than their script. The night before her execution, she returned to her cell like a shadow. She wrote a final letter full of love and forgiveness to her children and sister, words the revolutionaries later buried. She prayed for courage, for peace for her children, and for forgiveness for those who hated her. When she rose, only serenity remained. At dawn, they came for her. She changed behind a screen while they watched. They cut her hair with rusty scissors. They bound her hands. She asked why her husband had not been bound. No one answered. Then, without tears or trembling, she walked to the cart with quiet dignity. The cold morning air hit her as the wooden cart rolled through the streets. People shouted insults, but she remained silent, gaze fixed ahead. Painter Jacques-Louis David watched from a balcony and sketched her calm, austere figure, the most famous image of her final moments. The cart reached the Place de la Révolution. The guillotine loomed like a dark tower. She climbed the stairs herself. As she positioned herself on the plank, her foot brushed the executioner. "Forgive me, sir," she whispered. "I did not do it on purpose." No speech, no drama, just one last act of humility. The blade fell. The crowd cheered, "Long live the Republic." Her body was thrown into a mass grave, but her memory refused to stay buried. 22 years later, her remains were moved to the royal tomb at Saint Denis. Here is what matters. Marie Antoinette was hated, mocked, and destroyed by an entire nation. She lost her crown, her children, her freedom, her name. Everything was stripped away. But in her final moment, she showed something her executioners never expected: grace. They took everything, but they could not take her dignity. Because dignity is not given or stolen. It is something you choose, especially when the world demands you break. So here is the real question. What did they fear more? The queen with her jewels and power, or the woman who stood in that cart, hair cut and hands bound, and refused to break? She was a mother who loved her children until her last breath, a woman who chose forgiveness over vengeance, and a soul who proved that the quietest resistance is sometimes the most powerful. The guillotine destroyed her body, but not her spirit. And that is the legacy the revolution could not kill. If the story moved you, subscribe, hit that like button, and tell me in the comments what you think her final thoughts were as the blade fell. Because Marie Antoinette has been judged for centuries, but rarely understood.